You all finished? All right, black tray for me. So the first thing I want to do is talk about fractional parts of an inch. And I've already had this happen once today, so please, please, please pay attention. Inches do not work like the metric system. They do not work like centimeters. When we measure in centimeters, if it's not a whole centimeter, if it hits one of the little lines in between, you count over how many little lines there are, and it's point that. Inches don't work that way. Inches are not base 10. Centimeters are base 10. The metric units are much nicer for converting between units because you just multiply or divide by 10 or 100 or 1,000. It's just going to move your decimal places. All the other numbers stay the same. Inches, miles, feet, these are imperial units. And for the most part, they make no sense. We still have to learn how to work with them because the United States is stubborn and will not move over the metric system. I used to hate the metric system because it wasn't as intuitive for me. I wasn't familiar with it. But from a mathematical perspective, the metric system is much nicer and easier to work with. I want you to take and count, because I have this blown up image of an inch on your page there. This is 0. So starting with 0, I want you to count after that how many little lines there are until you get up to the 1. How many little lines starting from 0? So then this first little line, that would be 1, and then 2. How many little lines until we get to the 1?
8, 6, 8.
Close. 16.
Were you looking for somebody to say that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
16 little lines. So when we're talking about fractions, it's one part out of the total, right? What is the total number of little lines here? We just counted over and we got what?
15.
One more. 16 to get all the way to the end. I'm starting to count from 0, so then this is 1 out of 16. The next little line over would be 2 out of 16, so 2/16. What would the next little line over be? 3 over 16. And then 4/16. Fifth little line over? 5/16. Help me fill in the rest of it. 6/16. 7/16. 8/16. 9/16. 10/16. 11/16. 12/16. 13/16. 14/16. 15/16. And this over here would be 16/16. What's 16 divided by 16? That's how we get to that 1 whole inch. This first little line is 0 out of 16. That's why we're starting here. When we put point something, we count in base 10. Are there 10 little marks between beginning and end? So I can't put point and however many little lines I've counted over. When we're measuring in inches, I'll write down the whole number and then I'll count the little lines and I put that over 16. So we write it down as a fraction first. Once I have my fraction, I can stick a fraction in the calculator, right? What operation does a fraction mean? Division. So I can stick it in my calculator as a division problem to get the decimal. But I have to first do it over 16. Can any of these measurements reduce? Which ones can reduce? Yes. My even ones can reduce, right? The odd ones can't. Notice that the odd ones are the shortest lines. The shortest little lines. Every other line is a short little line, and it's not going to reduce. Something interesting happens with the little lines that are the same length. 2/16. What goes into both 2 and 16? 2. So what will I get if I reduce that? 1/8. Look over at the next one that I've circled in red, the 6/16. What goes into both 6 and 16? 6 doesn't go into both of them.
2.
2 goes into both of them. What do I get if I divide the top and the bottom by 2? 3/8. Look at the denominator here. 8 and 8. Look at the length of the little line. See how it's the same length on the line? It's going to have the same denominator. I circled 10/16 in red also. Will 2 go into both top and bottom? What do I get if I divide both top and bottom by 2? 5/8. Same length line, same denominator. What about 14/16? 7/8. Remember how we said the odd ones weren't going to reduce? 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, and 15 didn't reduce? Look at the numerators here on the ones that are the eighths. 1, 3, 5, 7. I circled 2 of them in green. What can go into both 4 and 16? What do I get if I divide both top and bottom by 4? 1/4. Will 4 go into both 12 and 16? What do I get if I divide 12 and 16 by 4? 3/4. There's the one right here, 8/16, that I circled in black, and it's the only one that I circled in black. How does 8/16 reduce?
2.
I'm sorry, what did you say, ladies? 1/2. 8 goes into both of them, 1/2. That's 1/2 an inch. How many little lines over is it? If I count the little lines starting from 0, 8 little lines. So if I count 8 little lines over, it's not 0.8. It would be 0.5, because 1/2 is 0.5 on my calculator, right? Please do not count the little lines and then put point that. You count the little lines and put it over 16. Then we can stick it in our calculators. All right, everybody should have a ruler. If you don't have a ruler, please raise your hand. We're going to measure these little line segments down underneath.
With the inches side or centimeters?
With the inches side. I want you to first write down the fractional parts of an inch. Write them as mixed numbers. So whole number of inches should be a big number. And then count the little lines and put that over 16.
Hold on.
So you're going to measure in inches.
You want us to start with the 0?
Yep. You line up the end with the 0. If it hits a whole number, you write the whole number down as a big number. And then for the little lines that you have to count, you put the number of little lines over 16. So I want you guys to practice measuring these. Line up one end with a 0. Yes, sir.
In between the two.
We'll count it as 4. So 1 whole inch, so put a whole number 1. And then 4 over 6. Perfect. Do that for all the lines on here. So line it up with the 0 first. Perfect. Thank you, ma'am. What was this one?
116.
It's 8 inches. You're on the centimeter side here. Flip it over. You want to be on the inches side. So put the whole number in front of this.
Like
yes.
one?
Mm-hmm. So 1 1/4. Yes. Yep. So you would do 21/16. And then you can stick that into your calculator to get the decimal form. Yes, sir.
Can I get a pencil?
Hmm?
Can I get a pencil?
Yes, absolutely. You're welcome. Write out all the decimals with it.
Can you come look at this?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mohammed.
Something wrong with her picture.
The printing is a little bit different between the two.
Okay, I'm at your. Hers
Yeah.
says 2, mine says.
Yep, yours is just a little bit short. Yeah, you're fine.
That's more than 6.
Yes, so the difference is this was sent to Kinko's to be printed,
Mm-hmm.
and this one was just done on the copy machine here. So the way it scaled the pages is just a little bit different.
Okay.
So.
Because you don't have the book for.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Yes, and that one you got to be exact, right? Don't worry about that one, because I know it's too big. So there is a little bit of difference between the spiral bound books and between the printed copies, and even between the printed copies, there's some slight variations. Just, that's the nature of printing sometimes, right? On this one right here, can anybody tell me what measurement they got? Give it to me as the fractional parts of an inch. What'd you get when you measured this? You said 1 and what? 5/16.
I got 20/16.
You got 20/16. Some people got 4/16. Some people got 3/16. That's very close together.
Am I wrong?
No,
Okay.
no. How would I take it from a form like this and get it into its decimal form? Divide 5/16, and then I'm going to add the 1 to it. Can somebody grab a calculator for me and do this division for me, the 5/16? 3125, so this would be 1.3125. If you got a different numerator when you counted your little lines, yours would be off a little bit from this. That's okay. That doesn't mean you did it wrong. As long as the number of little lines that you counted after the 1 goes in your numerator. If you counted 4 little lines over, what's 4 divided by 16? 0.25, yeah. So some people, when they measured this one, they got 1 4/16. So that would be 1.25. Did anybody measure this and get 3/16? Like it got to the whole one and then it was just over 3 little lines? I had some people in 3rd period today that when they measured it, that's what it was, and I checked it on theirs. That's what was printed on their page, so they didn't measure it wrong. What's 3 divided by 16? You said 0.1875? So this one would be 1.1875. That's how you change it into its decimal form. You do the fraction first on your calculator as division, and then you add the whole number at the beginning. When we measured this one here, can somebody tell me what they got when they measured that one? 3, and you said 3/16?
Yeah.
What did you get, Fabiha?
2/3.
2/3. Let me see.
Like 3 as an inch and
Show me.
0, 3, and then 2 over 3.
1, 2, 3. So it'd be 3 over 16 because it's always over 16. Mm-hmm. So 3 and 3/16. Thank you, James. How would I change that into a decimal form? Mm-hmm. We're going to add the 3. What is 3 over 16 again? 0.1875. So in its decimal form, it would be 3.1875. Do you guys feel like you have an okay understanding of how to do the measurement and then converting it into a decimal form? Okay, I don't want to spend the time to go through all the rest of these. I'm hoping that you guys got practice because I want to move on now to the next page. We had to learn how to properly measure in inches before the next page is going to make any sense at all. Yes, ma'am. Yes, if it goes out 4 places, give me all 4 places.
Okay.
Yep. Good question. If it runs off the screen, just give me the first 3 after the decimal. But if it stops at the 4th one, go ahead and give me that.
Okay.
All right, so I want you guys to turn to page 134. If you have a spiral-bound book, I want you to have 134 and 135 open side by side. This should have words on 134 and then a map of Indiana on 135. If you have the printed copy in a binder, you're going to have to flip back and forth. Sorry. All right. We are going to plan a trip, and we're going to figure out how far it is from one city to the other. Where should we start from?
Miami.
Miami is not in Indiana. Well, I think there is a Miami, Indiana, but we're just going to stick with the map of Indiana. You said Indianapolis? Okay.
No, it's so basic. Can we do Fishers?
Let me see if I have Fishers on the map. Yeah, we can do Fishers. It's on the map.
Where?
Fishers, hold on. Fishers is right here.
I can't see you.
It's just
Oh, I see it.
above and to the right of Indianapolis. Okay, so we can start in Fishers.
We started in Fisher.
Sure.
All right, and let's go to Marion.
Do something far.
Let's go to Santa Claus.
Bloomington, are you guys okay with well, hold on, there's no highways that go to Bloomington. That's going to be kind of hard.
Marion
Where's Marion at?
is right above Fisher.
Let's not go to Marion then. That's going to be really hard to measure.
Jeffersonville.
Jeffersonville.
At the bottom.
Right here. Beautiful.
Where?
We can measure to Santa Claus in a minute. Jeffersonville is,
Oh, I see it right next to Clarksville.
yeah, right down here.
Indiana is so small for a reason.
Clarksville. Okay, so Jeffersonville. I gotta say, this is the first time I've ever had those 2 places show up. I've been teaching this class for 5 years, and it is almost always Indianapolis to Gary. Almost always. That's what everybody wants to do.
That's probably what they all know, though. No one knows everything.
I think I've had a couple classes say Fort Wayne, but then other than that, it's Indianapolis to Gary. Jeffersonville is down here. You see it? What interstate would we take to get there, or at least most of the way? 65. So we're going to take I-65 south.
Do you memorize that? Like, I know you be driving and stuff. Like, do you memorize the highways? Because I don't think I could ever do that.
I didn't think that I would ever get it down, but after you do it over and over and over and over, yeah, eventually you're just like, okay, if I'm going to the east, like when my in-laws live in Cincinnati, we take 74. When we go on vacation, it's usually 65 south, unless we're heading out west, and then we take 70. If I'm going to Chicago, it's 65 north. Always. So we're going to figure out how far it really is in real life between these two. But first we have to figure out how this map is measuring things. How do I figure out how far on the map is whatever in real life? Where do I look?
The scale.
Scale down here. I want you to grab your ruler and I want you to measure that scale down there. So remember, we're not doing point anything. We're writing it as the fractional parts of an inch. Is it 1 whole inch at least?
No, it's moving.
It's more than an inch? So it's going to be 1 and then a fraction, right? So 1, and how many little lines over after that? You said 9?
Yeah.
So 9 over 16. Yeah, black tray for me, dear. Thank you so much. And it says that 1 and 9 over 16, we measured that in inches, right? That's how far in real life according to the map. Oops, I meant to write this up higher. How many miles in real life? 50 miles. I would prefer not to work with mixed numbers as we're doing this. Most of the time, if we have to be working with stuff that's not whole numbers in math, we usually prefer decimals over fractions, right? How do I take that 9 over 16 and turn it into a decimal? Divide it. And then we're going to add what to the front of it? A 1. So can you do that for me? 1.5625. So 1.5625 inches is equal to 50 miles. What is question number 1 asking me? How many miles are represented by 1 inch? I know that 1.5625 inches is 50 miles, so how do I figure out how far 1 inch is? Well, I can measure just to the 1, but I'm not going to know how many miles that represents, will I?
So we divide?
We can divide it. Divide by what?
Divide by 50.
Divide it by 50? If I divide it by 50, that'll tell me, let's see,
Divided by the 1.
50. Well, hold on. Let's take your suggestion and see what that tells us. What's 50 divided by 50? 1. This would tell me how many inches represents 1 mile. I want to know how many miles is represented by 1 inch. So how do I make it a 1 inch over there? Divide by the 1.5625. $1.5625 divided by 1.5625 is what? 1. So this would cancel here, and I'd have 1 inch is equal to 32. That actually came out way nicer than I thought, right? 32 miles. 1 inch on the map is the same as 32 miles in real life. You can't see? I can move out of the way.
No, can you just scoot it up a little bit?
I can't scoot it up, unfortunately. I'm sorry. With my old board, I could, but this one doesn't let me do that. I can take things like this, where I know, like I've got the map on one side, and I have real life on the other side. Do you guys remember when we did Nana's chocolate milk the other day?
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about keeping things in the right mix, the right proportion or ratio? So 1 inch is proportional to 32 miles in real life. So I can write it as a fraction like this, but it doesn't matter which way I use this fraction. I can set it up either way because it represents the same distance. Just one is on the map and one is in real life, right? So technically, If I set it up as a fraction, that fraction is equal to 1. 32 miles in real life is equal to 1 inch on my map. That's the same amount of space. If 1 inch is equal to 32 miles, how many inches represents 5 miles? Here's what I'm going to do. Here's how I use these proportions. I have 5 miles, right? And I want my answer in what kind of units? Inches. I am going to multiply by one of my proportions. And I want which units to cancel? I want miles to cancel because I want to end up with what unit? Inches. Whatever unit I want to cancel has to go on the bottom, and the units that I want to end up with have to go on the top. So which one of these proportions would make my miles cancel? First one. So I'm going to do 1 inch on the map over 32 miles. Can I take whole numbers and turn them into fractions?
No.
I can always put anything over 1. How do we multiply fractions? Straight across. My miles are going to cancel. Just like 5 divided by 5 is 1, miles divided by miles is 1. It cancels. I multiply top to top. What's 5 times 1? 5.
Wow. Very smart.
Then I multiply on my denominator. What's 1 times 32? 32. So what can I do now to figure out how many inches it is? Divide. 5 divided by 32. Grab your calculators and do that for me, please. You said
6.2 something.
0.15.
625.
625, and that's inches, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The same number, but no decimal.
What about if I change the question? How many miles is represented by 5 inches? How would I answer that question? Why? Now I'm trying to cancel out inches, so now I would multiply by 32 miles over 1 inch. So I'd make my inches cancel. What would I have in my numerator then? 160. What would I have in the denominator? 1. So this would be 160 miles. 5 inches is 160 miles. 5 miles is just a teeny tiny bit of an inch, right? Yes, ma'am.
So with the top part, if we had just divided the original equation by 10, would that have been okay?
Divided the original equation by 10.
Not the original equation, but when we were finding how much the scale is,
Mhm.
we got the exact same numbers. So if we had just divided that by 10, would that still make sense?
On this particular map, yes, but only because my scale had 50 miles. Yes. If my scale had a different number of miles, then not necessarily. Okay, so we said we're going to plan our trip from Fishers to Jeffersonville. Now you guys are going to use your measuring capabilities. Let's see if I can, here we go. Is it a straight line from Fishers down to Jeffersonville?
Kind of.
Dang near.
Kind of, until we get to like Indianapolis and 465, right? So around Indianapolis and 465, 69, you're gonna have to like bend this around. So like you're gonna have to measure and then hold it and then pivot and then measure down. Find the distance in fractional parts of an inch between between Fishers and Jeffersonville. So grab your ruler. For this weird part where it turns, you're going to have to wiggle that ruler around. It's not just a straight line. So we're going... bend this a little bit. So we're starting in Fishers. We're going to go this way. We gotta turn. So we have to come down here. Okay, so starting in Fishers, here I'm going to bend this because otherwise we're going to run into it. So I'm going to put the 0 on Fishers. When we get here to 465, we're going to turn, right?
Oh, okay.
So we're going to come down here, and then it turns again. Turn again. Go to here, straighten it out a little. Like anytime there's a turn, I'm going to hold my ruler still. There we go. So about right here.
Okay. So I can't go straight, right? Because there's curves.
Because there's no road that goes all the way straight there.
Okay.
So, ballpark. Was it at least 1 whole inch?
Yeah.
At least 2 whole inches?
Yeah.
At least 3 whole inches? Was it 4 whole inches? Okay, so 3, and then we need to do fractional parts of an inch here. And I'm sure everybody's is a little bit off here. What did we get about?
11/16.
I got 11 over 16 is the first thing I heard. You got 12 over 16. That's pretty close, right? So how do I take this now and change it into a decimal? Divide. So I'm going to do 3 plus, what's 11 over 16 in its decimal form? Yeah, yours was 12. Flip your fraction the other way. What did you get? 0.6875. So 3.6875 if we use the 11 over 12, or 11 over 16. So how do I figure out how many miles are in between these two? Remember, we had our 2 proportions, right? We had inches and miles, and it was 1 inch and 32 miles. Do I want inches on top or bottom? Bottom. I want miles on top because I want my final answer to be in miles, right? So where does the 32 go? Where does the 1 go? 1 goes in the denominator, 32 goes in the top. This is really a fraction, right? Do my inches cancel?
Yeah.
So I'm going to multiply straight across. And what are we going to get?
182.
118 even, or is there decimals?
Even.
Even. 118 what?
Miles.
Miles. All right, I'm going to give you guys one more that I want you to do on your own. This time, I'm going to give you a distance, and I want you to tell me how far it is on the map without measuring it. I want you to convert it. I am going to Terre Haute this weekend. My daughter has a birthday party there. Ugh. It is 76.9 miles from my house to Terre Haute. How many inches would that be on the map? How would I figure that out? Tell me how to set this up.
So, you would go 76.9 over 1, and then multiply it by 1 inch over 32 miles.
Yes. 1 inch over 32 miles, because that makes what cancel?
The miles.
Makes the miles cancel. Miles divided by miles, that's 1. Not 1 mile, it's just 1. So when I multiply this straight across then, what happens? 76.9 is the numerator, 32 is our denominator, and that's going to be in inches. So then I pop that into my calculator, and I get about what? 2.4. Sounds good. 2.4 inches. So if I were to measure that with my ruler, does that mean it's going to be 4 little lines over? No, it's going to be almost 8 little lines over, because that's where the halfway mark is. 0.5 would be halfway, right? So it's probably going to be 6 or 7 little lines over, somewhere about. You guys have a homework that's due tonight? Again, yes. This unit, it's pretty much like every 2 days there's a homework due. Practice with number sense, units, and ratios. It's more conversions like this. Remember, if they tell you that this is equal to that, you can set up a proportion. If it's beats per minute, you can do beats over 1 minute. Miles per hour is the same thing. That many miles over 1 hour.